Hi there. So we're on chapter 23 of Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey. Let's jump over there and get right into it. Okay. Lord Bulliabrain was never allowed to set foot inside the palace of ice. King Geldius, backed by the opinion of his favorites, still indulged the belief that he would be able to, in the end, to refrigerate him. True, he had been many years at the task, so that it had now become a sort of hobby of his, and almost daily did his frigid majesty pay a visit to his hot-headed subject, and test his temperature by pressing a small ball of ice against his temples. To King Gelidus' mind, a man of so high a temperature was a continual menace to the peace and quiet of his kingdom. What if Lord Hothead in a dream should wander forth some night and fall asleep with his back against one of the walls of the ice palace? Might he not melt away enough of it to throw the whole glorious fabric into a slump of slush and debris? It was terrible to think of, when he did think of it, and he thought of it quite often. But Bulliabrain had no terrors for me, nor for Bulger either. In fact, Bulger was delighted to be struck by a warm hand, and he and Bulliabrain and I soon became the very best of friends. But his frigid majesty was so alarmed when he heard of this friendship that he was seized with quite a spasm of warmth, for he thought the united heat of the three hotheads, might work some terrible harm to the welfare of his people. So he issued the coldest kind of decree, carved on a tablet of ice, that Bulliabrain and I should on no one day pass more than a half-hour together, that we should never touch palm to palm, sleep in the same room, eat from the same dish, or sit on the same divan. These regulations were annoying, but I followed them to the letter, and when King Gelidus saw how careful I was to yield to the strictest obedience to his decree, he conceived a genuine affection for me and sent several magnificent pelts to the ice house, which had been assigned to Bulger and me. For, of course, it would not have been safe for us to lodge in the palace itself, but his frigid majesty held out the flattering prospect that the very moment Bulger and I should become properly refrigerated, apartments in the palace would be assigned to us, and, in fact, that I should be permitted to eat at the royal table. Who are the Culticorps? Where did these strange folk come from? How did they ever find their way down into this world of eternal frost? And above all, where did they get their food and clothing from? These were a few questions which I was so impatient to have answered that my temperature was raised a whole degree, and I was obliged to sleep with only one single pelt between me and my divan of crystal ice. For a man bred and born in so cold a country as the land of the Culticorps, Bulliabrain had an extremely quick and active mind. On account of his rapid heartbeat and the consequent high temperature of his body, he was not able to do his writing on slabs of ice as other learned Culticorps had done, for it would not have been a pleasant thing for him to see a poem which he had just finished literally melt away in his hands, without so much as leaving an ink stain behind. So he had been obliged, with King Gelidus' permission, to do his writing on thin tablets of alabaster. Before he began to talk to me about the progenitors of the Culticorps, he showed me a map of the country in the upper world once inhabited by them, and traced for me the course they had sailed upon, abandoning that country, and described the beautiful shores they had landed upon in their search for a new home. I saw at a glance that it was Greenland, which Bulliabrain was thus unconsciously describing. And knowing as I did that in past ages Greenland had been a land of blue skies, warm winds, green meadows, and fertile valleys before moving mountains of ice came down from the north and crushed all life out of it, I listened with breathless interest to his wonderful tales of its beautiful lakes nestled at the foot of vine-clad mountains, all of which Bulliabrain now looked upon in fair visions inherited from his ancestors. And I also knew that it must have been the Arctic Ocean which had been traversed by the ships of the Culticorps, who had then landed upon the, in those days, sunny shores of northern Russia. But the mountains of ice could sail too, and they followed the fleeing Culticorps like mighty monsters, dashing themselves with terrible roar and crash upon the peaceful shores, which they soon transformed into a wilderness of berg, of glacier, and of floe. Only a handful of the Culticorps survived, and these, in their dumb despair, taking refuge in the clefts and caverns of the northern earls, could from their hiding places look upon one of the strangest sights that had ever greeted human eyes. So rapid had been the advance of these mighty masses of ice, crashing against the mountain sides and rending the very rocks in their fury, that the air gave up its warmth. The sun was powerless to give it back again. The animals of the wild wood and the beasts of the field, overtaken in their flight, perished as they ran and stood there stark stiff, with heads uptossed and muscles knotted. Then by the thousands and 10 times thousands they crushed crystals of perusing floods, caught up like a moss and leaves in the mountain torrent, and packed in every cave and cavern on the way, tearing broader and loftier portals into these subterranean chambers, so that they might do their work the better. And these then, O Bully Bran, are your meat quarries, I exclaimed, whence ye draw your daily food? Even so, little baron, replied the hot-headed Culticorp, not only our food, but the skins which serve us so admirably for clothing in this cold underground world, and the oil too, which burns our beautiful alabaster lamps, besides 100 other things, such as bone for helves and handles, horn for needles, and buttons for eating utensils, wool for the weaving of our undergarments, and magnificent pelts of bear and seal and walrus, which lay upon our benches and divans of crystal ice. Transform them into beds and couches, even when an inhabitant of thy world might envy. But, O Bullybrain, I cried out, have ye not almost exhausted these supplies? Will not death from starvation soon stare ye all in the face in these deep and icy caverns under the world, visited by the sun's light, yet unwarmed by it? Nay, little baron, answered Bullybrain with a smile almost as warm as one of my own. Let not that give thee a moment's alarm, for we have yet as barely raised the lid of this icebox of nature's packing. We are not large eaters anyways, continued the Lord Hothead, for while it is true that we are not indolent people, for his frigid majesty's palace and our dwellings need constant repair, and new hatchets and axes must be chipped out in the flint quarries, and new lamps carved and new garments woven, yet it is also true that we take life rather easy. We have no enemies to slay, no quarrels to settle, no gold to fight over, no land to drive our fellow creatures from and fence in, nor can we be ill if we were willing to be, for in this pure, cold, crisp air disease would try in vain to sow her poison germs. Hence, needing no doctors, we have none. As we have no lawyers either, or merchants to sell us what belongs to us already. His frigid majesty is an excellent king. I never read for a better one. I doubt that his like exists in the upper world, always cool-headed, no thought of conquest, no dreams of power, no longing for empty pomp and show ever enter his mind. Since the day his father died, and we set the great Culticorp crown of crystal ice upon his cool brow, his temperature has never risen but half a degree, and that was only for a brief hour or so, and was occasioned by a mad proposal of one of his counselors, who claimed that he had discovered an explosive compound, something like the gunpowder of thy world, I fancy, by which he could shatter the glorious window of rock crystal set in the mountain dome under our world and let in the warm sunshine. Did his frigid majesty Gelidus put this daring Culticorp to death? I asked. Oh dear, no, replied Bullybrain. He merely ordered him to be refrigerated for so many horns a day until all his feverish projects had been chilled to death. For no doubt, little baron, a man of thy deep learning knows full well that all the ills which thy world suffers from are the children of fevered brains, of minds made restless and visionary by the high temperature of the blood which gallops through the approaches to the dome of thought, stirring up wild dreams and visions of thy son lifts the poisonous vapor from the stagnant pool. The more I listened to Bullybrain, the more I liked him. The fact of the matter is, I preferred to sit in his narrow cell with his plain walls of ice lighted by a single alabaster lamp, and converse with him to loitering in the splendid throne room of his frigid majesty Gelidus. But Bulger had discovered that the pelts of Princess Schneeball's divan were much thicker, softer, and warmer than the single one allowed Lord Hothead, and therefore he preferred spending his time with her. But fearing lest he might get into mischief, I didn't dare leave him alone with the princess too long a time. Oh. So where are we at? Let's see here. 9 minutes. Shall we do 24? Yeah, let's do 24. At the time of Bulger's and my arrival in the land of the Culticorps, the Princess Schneeball was about 15 years of age, and I must say that rarely had it been my good fortune to make the acquaintance of such a sweet-tempered, lovable little creature. She flitted about the ice palace like a beam of sunlight, and there was nothing of the spoiled child about her, although a bit mischievous at times. Her voice was full of music as a skylark's, and it was not many days before she and I had become the best of friends in the world. Now you must know, dear friends, that according to the law of the Koltykwerps, a princess is left absolutely free to choose her own husband, and his Frigid Majesty was very anxious that Schneebol should pick hers out as soon as possible. Moreover, the law of the land gave her perfect freedom to choose a husband of high or low degree, provided he was young enough. The way in which Koltykwerp princesses were required to make known her preference was to press a kiss upon the cheek of the young man whom she might settle upon. This ennobled him at once, and he became the heir apparent to the throne of ice, and entitled to sit on its steps until he should be crowned king. Now his Frigid Majesty was delighted to see this friendship spring up between Schneebol and me, for he hoped to make use of my influence to bring her to set the necessary kiss on some youth's cheek before I took my departure from the cold kingdom of the Koltykwerps. I gave him the word of a nobleman that I would do my best to carry out his wishes. With Schneebol for a guide, Bulger and I often went for walks through the splendid ice grottos of her father's kingdom, selecting days when the sunlight of the outer world poured strongest through the mighty lens set in the side of the mountain. Then these grottos took on a splendor that my poor tongue is powerless to describe. Their crystal mazes glittered as if their walls were set with massive jewels most wonderfully cut and polished, and as if their ceilings were fretted with gems so peerless that all the gold of the upper world would fall short of paying for them. Here, there, and everywhere, the skill of the Koltykwerps had carved and chiseled graceful flights of steps, broad landings, and majestic columns of winding corridors lined with long rows of statues, single and group-wise, and ever and anon the visitor came upon a terrace where, seated upon a fur-covered divan, he might look out upon the bewildering beauty of King Gelidus' icy domains, arch touching arch, and dome springing from dome, while over and above, all through the gigantic lens in its granite setting, a mile above our heads streamed a flood of glorious sunlight, lighting up this world within a world with a radiance so grand and so complete as to seem to be a sun of a far greater splendor than the one that warmed the upper world and bathed it in so many gorgeous hues at morn and eve. Hardly a day went by now that the princess of the Koltykwerps did not surprise either Bulger or me with some gift or other. To tell the truth, dear friends, although my Russian coat was fur-trimmed, yet I began to feel the need of a warmer garments after a week or so's sojourn in the icy domain of King Gelidus, and I think Schneebol must have heard my teeth chattering, for one morning, upon entering the Palace of Ice, I was delighted to be presented with a full suit of fur, precisely similar to the one worn by King Gelidus himself. Nor was Bulger forgotten by the loving little princess, for with her own hand she had knitted him a blanket of the softest wool, which she belted so snugly around his body and tied so tightly around his neck that henceforth he felt perfectly comfortable in the chill air of the home of the Koltykwerps. One day the Princess Schneebol said to me, "Oh, come, little baron, come to my favorite grotto, now that the sun's rays are bright within it. Thou shalt see a wonder, Princess Schneebol." "Yes, little baron, a wonder," she repeated, the little man with the frozen smile. "Little man with the frozen smile," I echoed. Come and see, little baron," cried Schneebol, hurrying on ahead. In a few moments we had reached the grotto and bounded into it, with the princess leading the way. Suddenly she halted in front of a magnificent block of crystal ice, clear as polished glass, and cried out, "There, look, there is the little man with the frozen smile." Even now, as the thought of that moment comes over me, I feel something of the thrill of half fear, half joy, as my eyes fell upon the little creature shut in a superb block of ice, himself a part of it, himself its heart, its contents, its mystery, there in its center, in easy posture, with wide-opened eyes, and with what might be called a smile upon his face, that is a glint of kindliness and affection. Oh, stop it. In its strange eyes, with their overhanging brows, sat a small animal of the chimpanzee race. He had possibly been asleep when the icy flood struck him, dreaming about beautiful trees bending beneath purple fruit, of cloudless skies above a coral beach below, and death had come to him so quickly that he had become a brother to this block of ice, while this happy dream was still in his thoughts. Oh, there he is. It was wonderful. It was more than wonderful. Spellbound by the strange spectacle, I stood there, I know not how long, with my eyes looking into his. At last Schneebol's voice around me. "Ha ha," she laughed. "Look, little baron, Bulger is trying to kiss his poor dead brother." In truth, Bulger did have his nose pressed firmly against the block of ice in his effort to scent the strange animal imprisoned in the crystal cell, so near yet so far beyond the reach of his keen scent. "Well, little Baron," cried Schneeball, "did I not speak truly? Have I not shown thee the little man with the frozen smile?" "Indeed thou hast, fair princess," was my reply, "and I cannot tell thee how grateful I am to thee for having done so." Then she plucked me by the sleeve. I pleaded, "Nay, gentle Schneeball, not yet, not yet. Let me bide a bit longer. The little man with the frozen smile seems to beg me not to go. I can almost imagine that I hear him whisper, 'O little Baron, break open the crystal cell of my prison and take me with thee back to the world of sunshine, back to the land of the orange tree where the soft warm winds used to rock me to sleep in the cradle of the swaying thoughts boughs, while the wise and watchful patriarch of our flock stood guard over us all.'" Schneeball's big round gray eyes filled with tears at these words. "Would that he were alive, little Baron," she murmured, "and that I could give him some of my happiness to pay him back for all the long years he has been spending in his icy prison." In a few moments Schneeball took me by the hand and led me away from the great block of ice with its silent prisoner. My heart was very heavy, and both Schneeball and Bulger did their utmost to divert me, but all to no purpose. Leaving the princess at the portal of the palace, I went to my dwelling, which was ablaze with the soft glow of its alabaster lamps, and there I found a beautiful new pelt spread over my divan, a new gift from King Gelidus. But I could take no pleasure in it. My thoughts were all of the little man with the frozen smile locked in the icy embrace of that crystal mold, which, in its cold irony, let him seem to be so free and unfettered, yet held him in such a vice-like grip. After a while I dismissed my serving people, and I laid me down for the night with my dear Bulger nestled against my breast, but I could not sleep. All night long those strange eyes with their uncanny glint followed me about, pleading but strong but silent for me to come again, for me to soften my heart like a child of the sunshine that I was, to shatter his crystal dungeon and set him loose, to bear him away from the icy domain of the Culticorpse out into the warm air of the upper world. What was I dreaming about? Was he not dead? Had not his spirit left his body thousands and thousands of years ago? Why should I let such wild thoughts vex my mind? What good would come of it? None whatever. I was a reasonable creature, and I must not give lodgment within my brain to such silly ideas. The little man with the frozen smile had been through almost playful fate, laid away in a beautiful... Oh, that drives me crazy. Look, it just won't go away. Laid away in a beautiful tomb. I must not disturb it. No doubt in his lifetime he had been the pet of a noble manor, brought to the Northland from some sunny clime by master powerful Argosy. Let him rest in peace. I must not dare to mar the beauty of his crystal tomb, so gloriously transparent. I was even sorry that Schneeball had let me into her beautiful grotto, and resolved to go thither no more. What poor weak creatures are we, so fertile in glorious resolutions, and yet so unfruitful of results, planting whole acres with fair promises, but when the tender shoots pierce through the grounds, turning our back upon the crop as if it didn't belong to us. So, there's 2 chapters, 23 and 24. We will continue with chapter 25 tomorrow. There's 32 chapters, so we're getting pretty close to see what happens. Are you starting to see any correlations with modern times? Maybe a little. But we'll find out what happens next time. See ya.